It gives me great pleasure to come once again to Help Library to give a talk. Last time when I gave a talk, the Help Library was in Fort. Now you have moved, and I wish you a very successful tenure in this new premises. Thank you. Today's talk will be concentrating on rhythm in life. And I would like to begin by asking you, our dear listeners, what do you understand by the word rhythm? And what does it mean to have rhythm in one's childhood, to have rhythm in one's life? Would you like to share what you think rhythm, the concept of rhythm is?
The flow of energy.
Heart beating.
The flow of energy, good.
Heart beating.
The heartbeat, breathing and heartbeat, flow of energy.
Whatever happens, you should be in the flow and rhythmically you perform.
Right. You should be in the flow and you should perform rhythmically. Right? Any other suggestions? Well, where do we have rhythm whenever we are looking at rhythm? Where is this rhythm to be found?
Music.
Music, good, good. What else?
Aerobic exercises.
Exercises, yes. Different kinds of exercises. Aerobic also, dancing.
Yoga.
Yoga, yes, indeed.
Making love.
Yes, also, why not? Rhythm is there wherever there is movement.
Yeah.
Alright, so one can say, yes please. Yes, yes please. For tea break, we spoke about this concept of rhythm, and we asked the public, what do you understand by rhythm? And it was very clear to see that you associate rhythm with movement. And if you associate rhythm with movement, what do you associate movement with?
Energy.
Energy, right. Energy, that is true. And when does movement not exist? When there is no energy. And if there is no energy, what do we assume? There is no life. So if we go from there, that we say energy is there where there is movement. Movement also is there where there is rhythm. So we can say that rhythm is there whenever there is life.
Yes.
Without life, no movement. Whether it is the modeling movement, whether it is the movement of the sun and the earth and the planets, whether it is the movement of the ocean, the wind, the rain, whether it is the movement of the animals, the birds. Whenever there is movement, there is rhythm. Now, in the olden times, the people always lived by rhythm. There was a deep, innate rhythm in their lives. How many of you have had the opportunity to observe life in the villages? You must have all seen how life is in the villages. The people who live in the villages, they follow a certain rhythm, a certain life rhythm. They often wake up with the sunrise, they walk to their work, they move a lot, their body, they go into the fields to work on the fields. Whatever they do, they are always in movement. Also their cottage industries, whether they are making things with their hands, if they are weaving, or if they are doing pottery, or whatever they are doing in the villages, the fact is that they are always going into a certain rhythmical movement. Then at night, there is no electrical light the way we have it here. In many villages, there is no electricity. In many villages, there is no television. Alright?
Because it's hot here.
Pardon me?
Hot here, I said.
It's getting hot. Okay, no problem. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Alright. So if you go into the villages, you see that the people live according to a certain rhythm. At night, in many villages, there is no electric light, there is no television. So when the sun sets and it gets dark, then they light their lamps, and soon after they go to sleep. So there is a certain rhythm which is determined by the seasons, which is determined by the change of day and night, and so on. So the people in the ancient times, and also the people who live in the villages today in our country, they have a certain rhythm in their lives. What can you say about the rhythm in the cities?
The Marwadis follow this rhythm actually because they eat on a prescribed time. You know?
Yes.
Okay. And by 5:30 they have finished their dinner.
Ah.
Okay. So
That's right.
the Marwadi I'm talking about, not the present generation,
Yes.
but the older generation, they had 5:30 breakfast, 5:30 dinner, and that is it.
Especially Jains.
Yeah.
That's
And they
very
still
good.
follow it.
Before sunset.
Before sunset,
Before
yes.
sunset.
We have noticed that also the Jains do that.
Yeah, that's the thing. The
Yes.
Marwadis, they
Marwadis.
Exactly. They don't eat after sunset. So even that is a rhythm. Definitely. Now if we live in a big city like Mumbai, I mean imagine Mumbai has more than 22 million population. Then the life in Mumbai is very hectic.
Yeah.
We have to go out of the house early, we have to catch the train, we have to be at work at a certain time, we have to complete our work before we get back to home. So all these things put a pressure on us.
It's stressful.
The adults have lost touch with the natural rhythm, especially we adults in the big cities. We have lost touch with our natural rhythm, our waking and sleeping. Okay.
But it's more so with the children. At least the
Yes.
present generation, we still follow a certain amount of rhythm, you know.
Exactly. And this is where we are coming to now. You see, when parents have children, then the parents take a certain responsibility for the growth and education of their children. It is the responsibility of the parents to ensure that their children have a healthy lifestyle. And one of the first things that the parents have to consider for their own children is that the children should have a proper rhythm. Now, please tell me, dear friends, what do you understand by a proper rhythm for children?
To follow discipline.
Okay, to follow discipline, right? That is one way of ensuring rhythm. Somebody has to give them a certain discipline. Thank you. What else?
We must tell them the certain schedule from after getting up.
Right.
One is the habit of getting early.
Yes.
And then whatever daily core or
Routine.
something, routine,
Yes.
including studies, play
That's
and all
right.
these things.
But
There has
they
to be
have to
some
follow.
set pattern.
Yes. So you said they have to follow a schedule.
And
You said routine.
Conditioning. Conditioning. actually.
Conditioning also. Now, who determines these rhythms? Who determines the schedule and the conditioning?
Parents.
The parents, and also, of course, when they go to school, the
School, the
teachers.
teacher.
Yes.
Actually, the school does better than the parents because today's children do not give that kind of importance to parents anymore.
Yes. Unfortunately, this is very true what you just said. The teachers can ensure the discipline better than most
Yes.
parents. And as you rightly said, unfortunately it is so that in many cases the children do not listen to what their parents say and they prefer to do their own thing. But of course in school they have to go with the discipline
Because
of the
of
school.
teamwork. I
Because
mean,
of teamwork. Because an entire class is looked after by a teacher, and if the teacher gives certain disciplinary action and so on, and if the children don't adhere to that, then there is chaos.
Correct.
There are problems. So the children are expected to follow certain patterns of discipline. Absolutely. Now, of course, it is also so that in many cases, both parents are working.
Yeah.
And they have to work because Mumbai is an expensive
Yes, yes,
city.
yes.
And if both parents don't work, then sometimes they cannot make ends meet. Of course, if the husband has a very, very good profession and a very good job and he earns a lot, then the wife can afford to stay at home and look after the children. But this is not always the case, because if the husband is not earning enough, then how are we going to ensure that the children get good schooling and so on? So the wife also goes to work. And then the situation is that the child is being looked after either by the servants or maybe by the grandparents.
Or the creche.
Or in the creche, exactly. Daycare center, this is often what the children are subject to. So of course, the parents only have a very limited voice in the life of the child. But if the parents would have more to say, then the best thing for the parents to do would be to ensure that there is a certain rhythm in the life of the child from the time the child gets up in the morning till the time the child goes to bed at night. And what is the most obvious rhythm in the daytime, in the life of a child during the day? What would you say?
Food habits.
Fruitful habits, but what is one main rhythm that the parents have to adhere to? It is, of course,
Love and affection.
yes, but love and affection goes beyond rhythm. It is there always. But here we are talking about actual rhythm. So the main rhythm is the waking and the sleeping, right?
Yeah.
So if the child wakes up early, then the child also sleeps early. Now in many cases
The parents don't adhere this too
yes.
because of their own lifestyle. So what will the child do?
Well, this is the biggest problem. In many cases, the parents don't even come home till much later.
Yeah.
And then when they come home, the children want to play with the parents, they want to talk with the parents, they want to sit and have a meal with the parents. So by the time everything is over and the children go to bed, it is very late. So what can one do? One has to see what is the best possibility.
The parents have to adhere to discipline first.
Yes. So here we are looking at...
This is such a role model.
Yes. The parents have to be the role model. That is quite clear. In adhering to a certain rhythm, the parents have to ensure that they are the role models. But now what happens? That is the most important. The waking in the morning and the sleeping at night determine how the whole day works. For instance, if the child wakes up very early, but the child goes to bed very late, then by the time afternoon comes, the child begins to feel sleepy and the child goes to sleep. And sometimes in the daytime, the children sleep for 3 to 4 hours and they waste the day. And because they are sleeping in the afternoon, they are wide awake at night. And so they are playing and actually just running around and musty. At night, they are doing a lot of mischief. So the first thing to do is to ensure the rhythm of waking and sleeping. And if the parents are very strict about it, what they will do is that the parents will ensure that the children wake up early and go to bed early, and that they do not form the habit of sleeping during the daytime. And the research has proved that children who wake up early and go to bed early and do not sleep in the daytime, they do very well in school, they are very bright, they are very attentive, they play well, they work well, they study well, they are bright in the way they live their lives. They are very bright.
There is another school of thought which believes that the children as well as the elderly, they must at least half an hour break in the afternoon. A little siesta.
Yes, but the little siesta is difficult to follow because sometimes what happens is that the half hour can stretch into 2 hours.
There is no control. No control.
Yes, because if you say only half hour, it's not so easy to make the child go to bed at 2 and then 2 o'clock in the afternoon and then wake him up again at 2:15 or 2:30. So better to cut down this habit altogether And that would create a very good rhythm for the children, because see, if the child has to go to school in the morning, and if the child does not wake up on time, then what happens
They
is
miss the school bus.
they might miss the school bus. So in order not to miss the school bus, the child does not have any breakfast. Or maybe the mother just gives her a glass of milk and says, quick, quick, drink up this milk and go on the bus. Now what happens is, if you have an empty stomach, it is very difficult to concentrate. And by the time the break comes, the child is feeling very hungry, and the child cannot concentrate in class because the child is sitting there on an empty stomach. So even if the parents are very, very rich and they can afford very good nutrition for the child still goes to school on an empty stomach and is hungry and feels very uncomfortable because it has an empty stomach. And then it starts becoming very chaotic and cannot focus on what the teacher is saying. So this is one very big problem that we face, that the children are not given adequate breakfast in the morning before they leave home. So this is one of the problems we can face if there is no proper rhythm.
Actually, we all of us face this already.
Yes, but if we face it as adults, we can at least take care of that. But if the children face it when they are very, very young, then it sets a very bad precedent for later life. So the first advice that we give to the parents is, please dear parents, make sure that your children wake up early so that they have the morning before they go to school, before the school bus comes, everything is done in a nice rhythmical way. Not too fast, not agitated, where the children, come on, hurry up, and this and that. But the child, it gets up slowly, takes a leisurely bath, then takes time over breakfast, has a little bit of conversation with the parents, and then when the bus comes, the child is very relaxed and is ready, waiting for the bus, and then the bus comes and the child gets onto the bus, and when the child arrives in school, he or she is feeling very relaxed. This is something we want to do. We do not want children to get agitated even before the day has really begun. So the first rhythm that we have to ensure is the early waking and early sleeping, and if the child must sleep in the afternoon, only for a short time, as you rightly said. What is the other rhythm that we have for our children?
Food habits.
Food habits, definitely. That is also a kind of rhythm. When do we eat and when do we not eat? Now what happens is that a lot of children, because they don't have proper breakfast, then they start getting hungry in the middle of the morning and they want a snack. So then the mothers and fathers sometimes give them snacks which are just what we would call junk food.
Fast food.
Yes, they can just grab some biscuits or some chocolate or wafers or crisps or something like that, and then they just stuff themselves because they are hungry. But the result is that if they eat between meals because they are hungry, then by the time the good lunch appears on the table, the children have already finished their food and they are not hungry anymore and they do not eat proper lunch. So here is another problem that we face. If the children get a wholesome breakfast before they go to school in the morning, then if they have had a good breakfast, the first break, they don't really stuff themselves. They just have a little bit. And then when lunchtime comes, they are hungry enough to have a proper lunch. And if they must eat snacks, then it is better to give them snacks which are also wholesome. So you can give them snacks like carrots or apples or some other fruit like that, or some wholesome salads. They can have some salad like that. So this is what the children would get for their snack. And because it is wholesome, by the time lunch comes, they already have a good appetite. And then after lunch, they have their tea time again. At tea time, there should be proper snacks, and finally dinner, but dinner should not be served too late.
Yeah.
Dinner should be served maybe 6:30 or 7 p.m. Better it is even earlier, as the giants do, as you said, before the sun sets. If they are given the dinner, then they have eaten well, and then they are able to go to bed early. So here we have the second rhythm. The first rhythm was the waking and the sleeping rhythm that we have to regulate and we have to harmonize and balance out. The second rhythm is the rhythm of the food. When do we eat and when do we not eat, and how much do the children eat and what kind of food they eat. So there are three things. When the food should be served, how much food should be served, and what kind of food should be served. That is also very clear. Sometimes some children just eat out of boredom.
Yeah.
Because they are feeling bored, they just keep eating. And that's also not good, because then it leads to children becoming overweight. And if they are overweight or even obese, then they get all kinds of illnesses. So the food intake is very important. As they say, prevention is better than cure. So instead of allowing them to become sick in the first place, if we can ensure that there is a healthy eating lifestyle, then the children are able to remain healthy even later in life. So that's the second rhythm. What is the third rhythm that the children face in the course of the day? What would you say?
Regulation of the studies.
Regulation of the studies.
So taking care of your body like bath,
Yes.
your excretory
Yes.
habits and all these things.
That is also very important.
And to
But-
play time.
So here we have these two, studies and play, which also then leads to how well you manage your own self. Now, it has been said, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And that is true. Or makes Jill a dull girl. Now that is really true. If the children only study, then they become very dull. So for example, they go to school and they study. Then they come home and they do their homework. Then they go to their tuition and there they study. So by the time the day comes to a close, they have only studied and studied and studied, and there has been no time for playing. So we as adults have to ensure that the children really have time to play, because this is like in-breathing and out-breathing. When you are sitting still and reading or studying or thinking, then it's like in-breathing. And when you go out in the garden or downstairs in the colony and so on, and you play with the other children and you jump and yell and scream and shout and climb and so on, it gives your body a lot of free movement, and that ensures also a kind of out-breathing process. So studies and play time has to be regulated so that there is not too much of the one and not too much of the other. Now in the holidays, when the children are at home from morning till evening, when the children are at home all the time, then a lot of parents say, oh, we don't know what to do with our children, because how much can they play? And that is true. The children can't play non-stop all day long. So then we have to ensure that there is a balance between going out and playing and going into the movement and coming back and being a bit still. And for that, we have to ensure that the children do certain sensible things at home which we would approve of. For example, reading good books. I mean, there is nothing to substitute a good book. However much is happening on the television or on the internet or something, if you give a child really a good book which takes a child's attention and imagination and which really gives the child pleasure to read a good book, to read a good story.
We used to have Enid Blyton, but not anymore.
Yes.
Archie's.
I remember we also used to read Enid Blyton and all these wonderful stories starting with Noddy when we
Yes,
were very small,
yes, yes.
and then growing up, Famous 4, Famous 5, Mallory Towers and all.
Archie's, Jughead.
Yes, and all these nice comics. We used to enjoy like anything.
Not anymore.
But these books are not there. But there are other books in their place. All we have to do is to ensure that we choose good books for our
books, yeah.
children.
And comics also good
Yes,
comics. yeah.
good comics. Now, for example, in our own culture, in our Indian culture, there are some very beautiful books which we can encourage our children to read. For example, let's say the children's Ramayana.
Yeah.
You don't have to give them a very difficult version of the Ramayana, but you can easily get the children's version of Ramayana. Now they can read these, and it is so interesting for them to read about Ram and Sita and Lakshman and Hanuman and all. And while they are reading, they are deriving joy, and at the same time they are learning something about our culture, about our Indian tradition and our sanskar. Mahabharata is also very interesting. Then you can give them books of Panchatantra, these very interesting animal fables. And so even in our own culture in India, we can find many, many books. Also the Jataka tales
Yeah.
of Lord Buddha. So in our own culture, we can find many books. We can give them to read. And at the same time, we can also encourage them to read books which come from abroad. And I think if they can find the balance, again here it is the balance, right? The rhythm of books from our own culture and books from foreign culture, then it is wonderful. I mean, I remember when we were small, we were encouraged to read our Indian stories, you know, like Mahabharata and Ramayana and Jataka tales, as I told you, Panchatantra. And we also used to read these tales from Shahnameh, which comes from Persia. But at the same time, we also read books like Black Beauty or Heidi and so on, these classics, you know, from the ancient times, from olden times, but which come from abroad. And it was a very good balance for us. So if you can encourage the children to read good books, they can form a habit. You know, reading can become a habit.
Yes.
Believe me, if a child gets engrossed in a book, you cannot bring that child out of that book. And even if
We
something...
will not ask for anything. I mean,
Exactly. And even if something interesting is coming
Yeah,
on
you will not
television,
do, yeah.
they will not be so interested. They will bury their nose in the book and read it till they finish the book. I mean, I have seen families where children just sit there and read the book in front of the television. Other members of the family are watching something on the television, and they will nicely sit with them, but their nose is in the book. They are not looking at what is happening on the screen.
I remember in our family when we used to get one book, then one brother will read and other brother will be waiting to when he will finish and then I will
Exactly, this is what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this help library. It has such amazing collection of books.
Yes.
Now, where do all these books come from? They come from people who have read them,
Yeah.
who have studied these books. And imagine, just now I was given a guided tour of this flat. And in every room, there are so many hundreds of books. So what does it mean? It means that there are people who are interested in reading. And we have to help the children to form the joy of reading. Because we all know that the television is also injurious to the health.
Yes.
Now, if they can get into the rhythm of reading books, and if they watch only very little television and read more books, then that is also one way of ensuring good health. They will not only read and understand and use their imagination, but they will also remain healthy. Because from the television and from the computers, we also have things that are not giving us a lot of health. They are not health enhancing
Yeah.
at all. So that's another aspect that we have to
And giving
look
wrong messages also.
wrong messages. I mean, some of the pictures that come on the television, they are quite shocking, you know. And you always wonder, how is it, why is it that children are allowed to sit and watch these pictures? Now that is for the reading. And also, if you are wondering what to do during the holidays when your children don't go to school, there are other things besides reading. You can encourage them to draw pictures with crayons. You can encourage them to paint with watercolors. You can also encourage them to do some pottery with clay or clay modeling. There are so many wonderful activities that
In
the
our
children can
times,
do.
our schools used to give us some project.
Yes.
During Diwali, there's 1 month you have to do this project. You can choose the project,
Yes,
and at the end of the when you join the school, you have to present that.
exactly. This
But all-
is it.
But all these are not anymore possible, because the children's lifestyle, even at about 8th standard or 9th standard, have overshot their parents' lifestyle also.
There you are. This is so true, isn't it? Yes.
I remember my parents used to tell me that you have to come home 8:30, otherwise don't come. Today's children will come at 4 o'clock the next day morning. So this is just not possible, however much you want to justify, it's just not possible.
It's
just,
very, very difficult.
it's very difficult.
Yes, there is also peer pressure.
Yeah.
Yes?
This we mustn't forget, because you might want your child to behave in a certain way, but the other children in the classroom, they have another lifestyle, and it's
Yeah.
very, very difficult, to maintain a healthy rhythm, a healthy lifestyle, a sane lifestyle, because the other children also pressurize. So we have to
Be cautious
help
about
them.
that.
Yes, they have to be cautious, and they should be able to stand for
Good
them.
company and
The newspaper doesn't give you what you want, they give you only rubbish, and this is what the children are going to read and we are going to read.
Well, this is it.
Yes.
So we also have to monitor what are the children reading, because not all books are very good. There are some books which are not worth reading. So there we have to maintain a certain balance. Now this rhythm of reading, being quiet, and then going out to play, that has to be maintained also. You should encourage the children to go out and play cricket, football, whatever they want, but then they should also come back home and sit reading quietly. And what is more, they should be also encouraged, as they get older, they should be encouraged to help in the house. Because household chores are very important.
yes, that is very.
For instance, if a child is encouraged to come to the kitchen and to cook, or to help you to cook, it is wonderful. In the beginning, maybe the child will say, "Oh, I'm not interested in cooking." But if you say, "Look, let us make something nice together,"
Yeah.
and you make something that the child likes, let's say a cake. You say, "All right, today we are going to have chocolate cake, and we will all come together and make it with each other." They will be so thrilled. They will also invite their own friends, and they'll say, "Come next week, my mother is going to bake a cake, and we will all help to make the cake and then to eat that cake." So here you have an activity which is also in keeping with the rhythm, because when you are cooking, you also have a certain balanced rhythm in this activity. And the children are only happy to help in the kitchen. Today I read in Times of India that more and more children are becoming interested in helping to cook in the kitchen, and that the parents, mothers and fathers, are encouraging them to do so.
Yes.
They start with things that they are fond of, and then they also cook things for the whole family. So here is one rhythm where you can make the children do something that they will find not only enjoyable but also useful. Because when a child grows up, let's say the child has finished college and university, and now the child gets a scholarship to go to America to study further. And if the child doesn't know how to cook, it's very
Correct.
difficult.
Yeah, they
There are
have to
no
cook.
cooks over
No
there. They
cooks.
have to cook. Otherwise, every day they'll go
Yeah.
and have hamburgers,
And that
that's
is not
terrible.
also affordable every day.
Exactly. You can't afford to go out and eat every day. So it's a very useful thing to do, to make the children self-sufficient
Yes.
and keep a certain rhythm in their activities at home, to help in maintaining the house, in keeping the house clean, in making some nice dishes in the kitchen, etc. Alright, so here we have three main rhythms
Yeah.
which we can help the child to follow to keep a certain balance in his or her health. The first one was waking and sleeping.
Yeah.
The second one was eating at the right time, the right food, in the right rhythm. And the third is the activity of being quiet and of being active. Playing and reading, jumping about and coming back to do some nice activity and so on. Can you think of any other rhythms besides these three? What else can we think of? What else would be an added rhythm in the life of the growing
Added
child?
rhythm, I think, because we used to do that in our family, making self-sufficient to them, like taking any decisions. Maybe at that time people think that why to involve our child. But during the lunch time or the dinner time, when all are together,
Yes,
I mean, we used to discuss our problem whatsoever.
very
I
good.
mean, so let child also, after certain age, I mean, speak out about what he thinks about that.
That's a very good thing, because that also gives the child the feeling that, oh, my parents are listening to me, they are giving me advice, and they feel good about
Good
it.
about it.
Yes, indeed. That is something that one should also consider very seriously.
And that develops teamwork also. I mean,
Yes.
because he will be afterward will be team player. He will
Exactly.
not be alone.
Yes, definitely. Teamwork, this is
Teamwork.
very important. Another way of enhancing rhythm to create good health later in life is to encourage the child to take up some kind of art,
Yeah, yeah.
and especially some kind of rhythmical art. It can be singing,
Singing.
it can be
Painting.
playing a music instrument, painting, or even dancing,
That's
or as you said earlier, yoga. Because these things, they have to do with rhythm. When the
I
child
think
knows,
we missed, he should be cultivated, like he should have some exercise during the day.
definitely
because
yes.
Otherwise,
The
there is
playing,
no, yeah.
the playing will
Ah.
give the exercise, yes, definitely. But then some kind of musical activity is also extremely important. Musical activity, like singing, playing an instrument, dancing, and such
The
things.
kind of music we get is not what the music it was.
This is the whole thing.
John
The
Denver, Ricky Martin,
Yes.
all those people.
Yes. In fact, the music that we used to listen in our childhood.
Pat Boone.
Yes. This is it. In our childhood and in our youth, we used to listen to such beautiful music. But we can also encourage the children to listen to some nice classical music,
Classical, yes.
semi-classical music, and so on. I think it would go a long way in ensuring that the child has a good feeling about what the music is. And by, one can also instill in the child love for classical music, classical dance, classical singing. Very important. So now, my dear friends, this talk is aimed at showing that if we can instill rhythmical movement, or if we can maintain good rhythm in the child, as this child grows up, the child will become strong and healthy, and later on in life there will be fewer illnesses. Sometimes a person has an illness out of the blue, and then that person says, I wonder why I got this illness. There wasn't anything I did to get this illness. But then you have to ask, what did you do as a child? And then if you hear what that person may have done as a child, it might be that the illness that that person has in adulthood might have its cause in childhood. So this is the reason it's very important to ensure that when our children are young, they are given a good rhythmical lifestyle in order to ensure health later on in life. So dear friends, now we are almost at 4:30. I promised to speak for 1 hour and not longer, and I'm very glad that you could come and listen to my talk.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you
Health
very much.